Hi and welcome back. In this video, we'll be getting started with verbs, the action words. What is a verb? I go to the park. Go is a verb. In the sentence, you play baseball, play is a verb. In the sentence, we need a better team, need is a verb. Verbs are the words that provide the main action for a sentence. But don't confuse verbs with other kinds of action words. There are also nouns that refer to a kind of action, like in the sentence, he regained his sight. Sight is a noun that refers to the action of seeing, but the verb in that sentence is regained. Likewise, in the sentence, they're asking a question. Question refers as a noun to a kind of action, questioning. But the verb in that sentence is are and asking. There are also gerunds in English, verbal nouns, like the running was exhilarating. Well, the verb there is was, but running is a kind of verbal noun where the verb receives ing at the end and so can be treated like a noun in the sentence. Another example would be the sentence, the dog's begging was becoming a problem. Begging there is a gerund, a verbal noun, but was and becoming are the verbs in the sentence. Basically, if you can put the in front of it, it's not a verb. In English, we show the subject of the action of a verb with a separate noun or pronoun. So in the sentence, I want some coffee, I expresses the subject of the wanting. In the sentence, they are children, they are the ones doing the being. They're the subject of the verb are. In the sentence, the garden grows well in May, the garden is the subject of the verb grows. With verbless clauses, Greek also uses a nominal for the subject. Houtos Alexandros, or ho aner plusios. But with verbs, Greek shows the subject in the verb's ending. There's no separate word that needed to identify the subject. So the verb luo means all by itself, I set free. The subject I is contained in the ending of the verb itself. There are 6 different endings then for each verb, showing, first of all, the number of the subject, how many people are performing the action, either one, singular, or more than one, plural. The endings express the number and also the person, that is, the relationship of the subject to the speaking situation. First person is the speaker himself or herself, I or we. Second person is someone addressed by the speaker, you. Third person is someone or something outside the immediate conversation, him, her, it, or they. There are 3 basic parts of a verb. There's the stem, which contains the distinct idea of each verb. Then there's a connecting vowel, and then there's the personal ending. So lu, in the case of luo, is the stem. There's a connecting vowel a, and then an ending men, to make the verb luamen, which with this ending means we are setting free. Here are the present tense endings for each person and for the singular and plural. The singular first person ending is o. The second person ending in the singular is is. The third person is e. The plural endings are first person men, second person te, and third person nc, with a possible nu on the end if it eases pronunciation. If we add the connecting vowels onto those endings, we get, in the singular, o, ace, and a, and then in the plural, amen, ete, and use. And notice that when that ense ending in the third person plural is attached to the connecting vowel omicron, the nu changes to an upsilon. So instead of on see, we get u see. That probably is just a change that historically took place because of ease of pronunciation. If we look at the present tense forms then of the verb luo, which means I set free, in the singular, the first person, I set free, would be luo. The second person singular would be lues, and that would mean you set free, singular. The third person singular would be lue, and that would mean he, she, or it sets free. In the plural, the first person would be luomen, and that would be we are setting free. The second person plural would be lueta, and that would mean you, plural, are setting free. And the third person plural would be luusi, or luusin, depending on what letter begins the following word. And that would mean they are setting free. There's a little song that you can use to remember this if tunes help you out a little bit. And if you set this to the tune of The Farmer in the Dell, you can sing luo lues lue, luo lues lue, luomen lueta luce, luo lues lue. If that helps you, great. Here's just another example of another verb in the present tense. We have blepo, first person singular, second person blepes, third person blepe. Plural, blepomen, blepeta, and blepusi. So blepomen would be we see, or we are seeing. Blepeta would be you, plural, are seeing. And blepusi would be they are seeing. What's the meaning of the Greek present tense? The Greek present tense gives us two pieces of information, time and aspect. Time tells us when the action takes place in relation to the speaker's present. And the present tense generally is used for action that takes place around the same time as the speaker is talking. Aspect is slightly different. Aspect is the way the speaker invites us to view the action. And this takes a little getting English speakers. Imagine there's a train. If you see the train from far away, you can see all the cars at once. But if you see a train from beside the tracks, it looks quite different. Now the focus might be on seeing the front car, the engine, approach. And this is like the present aspect when we call it an inceptive present. We might translate blepo then, not just I see, but I am starting to see. If we're focusing on the motion of the cars passing, this is a little bit like the continuous present. Blepo can also mean I am seeing. The action is going on just as if we were standing beside the train tracks and watching the continuous motion of the train going past. I am seeing. Another thing that can strike us if we're standing right beside the tracks is how each car whips past us over and over again. And that repetitive motion of the cars going past us is a little bit like the view of the action that we get with the iterative use of the present. In this case, blepo could mean I often see, or I see over and over. The familiar rhythm after many of these cars pass, if it's a really long train, is a little bit like a habitual present. In this case, we would translate blepo, I usually see, or I frequently see. Finally, if we've been standing beside that train long enough, not only did we see it approach, not only did we watch it pass, not only did we see the cars passing over and over and over again until it became just a habitual sight for us to see, but we might get to the point where it seems like we've been standing here forever. And this is a little bit like the nomic present. In this case, blepo can be translated just I see, but this would be in the case of things like proverbs or laws, where there's no particular time reference. It's just a timeless fact that's being described. So does the present tense verb really indicate present time? Well, generally, yes. The present tense means present time. But present tense verbs can also be used for past events, especially in narrative passages when you're telling a story, and this often contributes to vividness, as if in English, when I tell a story, I might begin by saying I went to the store and was buying some chips, but I might switch to the present tense to add vividness, and suddenly a burglar bursts through the door and holds his gun up and says, "Give me all your money." Do you notice I switched to the present tense there in my English storytelling? Greek does something very similar. Also, in prophecy, we often see present tense verbs used, and this is an echo of the way tenses are used in Hebrew prophecy. How do we describe a verb? Well, we parse it. Parsing a verb means listing all of the information that we know about it. So we give the tense, for example, present. We give the voice, for example, active. We give the mood, for example, indicative. We give the person, first, second, or third person. We give the number, singular or plural. We give the dictionary form of the verb, and we give a gloss, a sample English translation. Now, a couple of the terms here are new to you. Voice is something that we'll learn more about later on, but suffice it to say that all the verbs we're looking at right now are active in voice. Mood, so far all of these verbs we've been looking at are in the indicative mood. And an indicative verb is, for all intents and purposes, just a normal verb that you use in an ordinary sentence. We'll see in a few minutes some other moods that have special uses. So how would we parse these verbs? Well, blepomen, we would say it's present, that's its tense. Active, indicative, that's its mood. First person, plural, of blepo, that's the dictionary form. I see, there's the gloss. Similarly, lue, we would say is present active indicative. Third person, singular, of the verb luo, I set free. Now, I mentioned that we would be looking at other moods. One of these is the infinitive. The English infinitive is made by adding to before the verb, so to run, or to buy, or to think. We often think of this as the dictionary form of the verb. The Greek infinitive is formed differently. We don't add any other word like to in front of the verb. Instead, we add an ending onto the end of the verb itself, the ending ein, epsilon iota nu. And if you have trouble remembering this ending, the final iota nu, in, reminds us of the in infinitive. What is an infinitive? An infinitive is a verbal noun. You're packing up the verb to play a noun's role in a clause. So we'll find infinitives playing several of the roles that nouns often do. One is as the direct object of another verb, and this is quite frequent. We might say, "Thello by name," I want to go. The verb there is thello, that's the indicative verb, but what is it that we want? Well, the object of our desire is by name, the action of going. And so we translate that, I want to go. Infinitives, though, are simpler than nouns. There are no different case forms. We'll see more roles for infinitives later on, but for now, translate them like the English infinitive, with ing or with to. So by name is to go or going. Thelein is to want or wanting. Agoradzein is to buy or buying, and echein is to have or having. The other mood we want to look at before we get much further is the imperative mood. The imperative is used to give commands or instructions. We're not just describing an action that happens like the indicative, but we're telling someone that an action must happen. In English, infinitives or imperatives would be things like go to your room, or take a bath, or apologize to your sister. The verbs go, take, and apologize in those sentences are each English imperatives. Again, imperative verbs are made in Greek by adding slightly different endings. The second person singular, you, form of an imperative is made just by putting an epsilon in place of the other verb endings. So instead of blepo or blepes, I say blepe, and that means you, see, look. If I want to make it plural, I just use the second person plural form of the indicative present tense verb, blepete. But in this case, in context, it can be clear that I'm not just saying you see and describing the fact that you have sight, but I'm giving an instruction. See, look. One of the things that's unusual in Greek is that there are also third-person imperatives. We don't have this in English, so it's a little bit difficult to express a command that's not given directly to the person we're addressing, but is directed toward a third party that's not present. So often, these third-person imperatives are translated with let him or let it. So blepeto, the third person singular, could be translated let him see, or with should. He should see, or he must see. The third person plural is blepetosan, and that would mean something like let them see, or they should see, or they must see. Imperative forms are easy because there are only these four forms. There aren't, of course, first-person, singular or plural imperatives because we don't usually give ourselves commands. We only give commands to other people directly or referring to the third party who is being commanded. So how do other moods work when we're negating the verb? To negate an indicative verb, we just use our familiar not, and put it right in front of the verb. I am not going is bino. But to negate other moods, infinitives and imperatives, we have to use a different word for not, the word may. And so we put that may, again, just in front of the verb. So if instead of saying I am not going, I want to tell someone do not go, with an imperative, bine, then I would put may in front of that and say may bine, do not go. And if I'm talking about shopping and I decide not to buy something, not to buy, negating the infinitive agoradzane, would just be may agoradzane. And when we learn other moods, like participles later on, for those too we'll use may instead of in fact, only negates indicative verbs. So once we get into more and more of these other verb forms, you'll see more and more of may. But still is quite common. You can learn more about Greek verbs and the present tense in particular in Mounce's Basics of Biblical Greek. And again, I've given the section numbers and page numbers in the relevant sections of the 3rd edition.